They called it the safest corridor in the American South. A clean state, a governed state, a state where the numbers looked good, the speeches sounded right, and the handshakes came with smiles. But behind every clean surface, federal investigators were finding something that did not belong in any democracy. And when they finally pulled back the curtain on Georgia, what they found was not corruption. It was command-level collusion. It was engineered treason. And tonight, you are going to see exactly how deep it goes. At 4:47 a.m. On a Thursday that Georgia will not forget, the darkness over Atlanta was still thick and unbroken. The interstate was quiet. The skyline glowed in the distance like an indifferent witness. But on the ground, in the warehouses off the Southern Industrial Corridor, in the gated compounds of Valdosta, in the shipping depots near the Georgia-Florida state line, something enormous was already in motion. Over 900 federal agents from the FBI, ICE, DIA, and DHS had been in position for 47 minutes. SWAT teams crouched at entry points. Black Hawk helicopters held altitude 3 miles out, running silent, waiting for the signal. This was Operation Iron Covenant. And it had been 18 months in the making. The breach happened simultaneously across 23 locations. In Atlanta, agents hit a logistics company called SunPath Continental, a trucking contractor with 48 registered vehicles and a portfolio of clients that included 3 state-contracted freight routes. The doors came off the hinges in under 4 seconds. Flashbangs lit the loading bay like a camera flash. Agents in black swept through aisles, stacked floor to ceiling, with crates stamped with agricultural export codes: oranges, timber, processed grain. But inside the crates, sealed behind false panels built with professional precision, federal agents found something that turned the air cold: 41 kilograms of pure cocaine, 19 kilograms of black tar heroin, and over 1.4 million fentanyl pills, pressed and packaged, ready for street-level distribution across 5 southeastern states. All of it moving north. All of it moving clean. All of it, according to the manifests, signed and cleared through a state logistics authorization office. In Valdosta, the second strike team hit a converted storage compound on the edge of a soybean farm. The perimeter fence was 12 feet high. The outer building looked like cold storage. It was. But beneath the refrigerated floor panels, agents found a fully operational underground transit hub, a network of reinforced corridors connecting 3 separate buildings, wide, enough for a cargo vehicle, with ventilation systems, security cameras, and motion-activated lighting. This was not improvised. This was engineered. Inside the tunnels, ICE agents found 42 individuals, migrants who had been transported from the Texas border through Cartel controlled smuggling convoys and funneled into Georgia as forced labor, as couriers, and as leverage. 42 human beings held in a tunnel under a soybean farm in the American South. And that was only the beginning. At the same moment, DIA strike teams hit 3 separate locations along the Georgia-Florida corridor, a cartel run bar outside Tifton operating as a cash processing front, a massage business in Albany that had been identified as a human trafficking intake point, and a warehouse near Moultrie that federal analysts had been watching for 6 months. In the warehouse, behind a wall of legitimate farm equipment, agents discovered what internal reports would later describe as the most sophisticated mobile drug processing operation ever seized east of the Mississippi. Methamphetamine, fentanyl precursor chemicals, pressing machines, packaging lines, enough raw narcotics material to produce an estimated 900,000 additional fentanyl pills within 72 hours. The operation had been running, according to seized records, for at least 14 months, and not once had it been flagged, inspected, or disrupted, because someone had made sure it would not be. Back in Atlanta, in the Federal Cyber Forensics Division, on the 7th floor of the Peachtree Street field office, analysts had been working since 2 a.m., processing the encrypted drives recovered from an earlier controlled seizure. The drives were triple encrypted, layered behind rotating cipher keys and ghost protocols designed to self-delete on unauthorized access. It took 11 hours to crack them fully. What emerged on the screens was not a cartel's internal ledger. It was an architecture, a blueprint. Federal analysts gave it a name almost immediately: the Covenant Network. And the Covenant Network was not just a drug operation. It was a state-level infrastructure redesigned from the inside out to serve the Gulf Cartel's expansion into the American Southeast. Shell companies were the first layer. 17 of them, registered across Georgia, Florida, and Delaware, with names like Magnolia Agricultural Holdings, Sunstate Community Fund, and Coastal Green Initiative. On paper, they were farming contractors, a charitable foundation, and a renewable energy grant processor. In reality, they were the financial skeleton of the entire operation, washing cartel money through real estate acquisitions, state infrastructure contracts, and falsified grant. Disbursements. Investigators traced $340 million in laundered funds moving through these entities over a 26-month period, routed through correspondent accounts in Mexico City, Panama, and the Cayman Islands before re-entering the U.S. economy as clean capital. Clean enough to build with. Clean enough to donate with. Clean enough to govern with. And that word, govern, is where the investigation changed everything. Because buried in the deepest partition of the recovered servers was a file labeled simply CV7. And inside CV7 was something that made senior FBI agents go quiet in a room full of federal officers. It was a communication thread. Encrypted? Yes. Obfuscated behind 3 layers of routing anonymization? Yes. But cracked. And what it showed was a direct authorization channel between the leadership structure of the Gulf Cartel's Northeastern Expansion Command and a senior political figure in the state of Georgia, a man investigators identified in their documents as Governor Harlan DeVoe. A fictional name. A real level of power. A real level of betrayal. Governor DeVoe, according to the evidence compiled in CV7 and cross-referenced against financial transfer records, patrol schedule logs, and internal state agency communications, had been on cartel payroll for no less than 31 months. His authorization codes appeared in documents that adjusted state freight inspection protocols. His digital signature was embedded in internal communications that redirected Department of Transportation maintenance windows, essentially shutting down way stations along I-75 and I-95 for scheduled maintenance during the exact hours that cartel convoys were rolling north. His office had approved agricultural zone reclassifications in 3 southern Georgia counties that removed the properties from routine sheriff's department patrol grids. Every adjustment was small. Every adjustment was deniable. Together, they formed a corridor. A clean, uninterrupted state-sanctioned highway for the Gulf Cartel to move cocaine, heroin, methamphetamine, fentanyl, and human cargo through the heart of the American South. This was not negligence. This was not oversight. This was a governor who had turned his state into a cartel fortress and had done it one signature at a time. At 5:15 a.m., Operation Iron Covenant entered its second phase. Inside the Joint Command Center, established at Robins Air Force Base, a digital operations map covered the primary display wall, 46 red markers pulsing across Georgia, northern Florida, and eastern Alabama. Each marker represented a target. Each target represented a node in the Covenant network. The Joint Task Force commander addressed over 1,200 assembled federal agents, SWAT operators, ice field teams, and DIA tactical units with 4 words: "We take it all." What followed was 6 hours of coordinated federal action the Southeast had never witnessed. In Savannah, agents hit the port-adjacent logistics hub, where cartel-controlled shipping containers had been passing through customs with falsified manifests for over 2 years. Containers listed as processed timber and industrial ceramics, carrying inside them vacuum-sealed bricks of cocaine and methamphetamine, destined for distribution networks across Georgia, the Carolinas, and Virginia. In Macon, a cartel-affiliated real estate holding company's central office was raided, yielding server farms, communication equipment, and a physical safe containing $4.2 million in cash and 17 prepaid encrypted phones with active connections to Gulf Cartel logistics coordinators in Tamaulipas, Mexico. In Columbus, near the Alabama state line, ICE agents descended on a residential compound that had been operating as a human trafficking transit station, a facility where smuggled migrants were held, sorted, and either forced into cartel labor networks or sold to labor contractors operating under the cover of the state's agricultural workforce. Programs. The numbers, when compiled at the end of that 6-hour operational window, were staggering. Over 2.1 million fentanyl pills seized, more than 4 tons of combined cocaine, heroin, and methamphetamine recovered. 47 cartel-linked suspects arrested, $68 million in cash and assets frozen, and 23 law enforcement officers, including 2 Georgia State Patrol supervisors, a regional DIA liaison officer, and a senior official within the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, taken into federal custody on charges of conspiracy, obstruction, and material support for a criminal organization. That last number, 23, is the one that did not make the early morning broadcasts. Because those 23 were not rogue officers acting alone. They were part of a system. A second system, running parallel to legitimate law enforcement, designed and maintained to protect the Covenant network. Investigators examining the seized B servers found patrol rerouting commands issued on nights coinciding with known cartel convoy movements. They found encrypted tip-off messages sent to cartel security teams hours before legitimate federal task force operations in the region. They found falsified incident reports that listed cartel safe houses as cleared residential properties with no activity. One veteran FBI agent, a 22-year investigator who had worked organized crime across 4 states, told his team that what he was looking at was not a compromised police department. It was a parallel enforcement structure, a second police force, wearing the same badges, answering to a different command. The badge will be rebuilt from the ground up, he said. But first, we have to understand how completely it was taken apart. At 9:47 a.m., a motorcade of federal vehicles moved through the quiet streets of the Buckhead district in Atlanta, past the manicured lawns and the iron gates, past the security cameras and the guard stations, and stopped in front of a 10-acre compound registered to a state agricultural trust. The compound belonged, through 7 layers of corporate ownership that federal forensic accountants had spent 9 months unwinding, to Governor Harlan DeVoe. FBI agents with a federal warrant and a joint task force team moved through the front gate. Inside the main residence, secured encrypted communication terminals were recovered. A private server array was found in a basement utility room, still running, still transmitting. A physical document safe yielded what investigators would describe in sealed federal filings as the most significant evidence package in the operation. Physical ledgers, printed, authorization logs, and a handwritten operational timeline linking DeVoe directly to the Gulf Cartel's southeastern expansion plan dating back to the initial contact meeting, held not in Georgia, not in Mexico, but in a private suite at a resort in Nassau, the Bahamas, 37 months earlier. The plan had a name. The Gulf Cartel called it Proyecto Frontera Sur, Project Southern Border. Its objective was not simply to use Georgia as a transit state. Its objective was to establish Georgia as the permanent administrative headquarters for Gulf Cartel operations east of the Mississippi. With a compliant governor, a corrupted state patrol system, state-controlled freight lanes, and a laundered financial infrastructure woven into the legitimate economy, the cartel would have had something it had never achieved on American soil before: a state government, not infiltrated, not bribed, owned. The system was not redesigned for corruption. It was redesigned for the cartel's future. And it had been working, quietly and efficiently, for over 2.5 years. Zoom out from Georgia for a moment, and what you see is not a local story. The Covenant Network's trucking routes connected Atlanta to Charlotte, Memphis, Richmond, and Baltimore. The agricultural corridor disguises used in southern Georgia were replicated in 3 other southeastern states, according to documents recovered from the cartel's communication. Servers. The shell company structures identified in Georgia had mirror entities registered in Texas, Tennessee, and South Carolina. What federal investigators dismantled in Georgia was not the whole network. It was the crown jewel, the nerve center, the place where the plan was furthest along. In other states, the architecture was still being built. Iron Covenant gave federal agencies across the country a map. And every red marker on that map represented a conversation that had not yet happened, but now would. There is a kind of power that does not announce itself. It does not come with gunfire or ultimatums. It comes with signatures, with maintenance schedules, with charitable foundations and freight contracts and policy adjustments that no one reads carefully enough to question. The Gulf Cartel understood this, and they found in Governor Harlan DeVoe a man who understood it too. Together, they built something in Georgia that was designed to last for decades, a quiet empire running beneath the surface of a legitimate state, feeding fentanyl into the bloodstream of the Southeast, trapping human beings in tunnels under soybean farms, and corrupting the law enforcement systems that the people of Georgia trusted to protect them. The real cost of what was built here is not measured in seized kilograms or frozen accounts. It is measured in the families in Atlanta, Savannah, Macon, and Valdosta who lost someone to fentanyl that moved through a tunnel signed off by their governor. It is measured in the migrants found in those underground corridors who entered the country looking for something better and found themselves property of a cartel. It is measured in the officers who served honestly for years, not knowing that the institution they worked inside had been hollowed out around them. Those are the numbers that never make the operational summary. Those are the numbers that matter most. Operation Iron Covenant is not finished. Federal investigators have confirmed that proceedings are ongoing, that additional arrests are expected, and that the evidence recovered from the Covenant Network servers will drive investigations extending well beyond Georgia's borders. What began as a surveillance operation on a trucking contractor in Atlanta became, 18 months later, the largest single dismantling of cartel political collusion in the history of the American Southeast. If you are still watching this, tap like so this story reaches people who need to hear it. Comment expose if you believe that political corruption and cartel infiltration need to be dragged into the open, no matter how high up it goes, because silence is how this started. And it is only attention, pressure, and truth that ends it.